folks. We're on Highway 45 northbound, just north of Tupelo, Mississippi. And we're going to get off at the Guntown exit. How can you not love Guntown, Mississippi? You just entered the city limits of Guntown. I mean, what better address to have than, where do you live? I live at 123, I'll whoop your ass in Guntown, Mississippi. United States of America. My God, how could you get a better address than that? So the city of Guntown's to the right, folks, but where I'm going to take you guys is just to a little Civil War battlefield. It's called Brice's Crossroads. And I'm going to take you for a little walking tour over there. And just show you a little slice of Civil War history. Now, it's not the only historic site here and around, around Tupelo, Mississippi, but it's a nice little site out there. And we're also going to take you to see a Confederate soldier's grave over on a, well, it used to be dirt road. Hell, it may have paved it by now, but it's just a single grave over there. And back in the day, they had the original headstone on it, but I guess they scared somebody was going to steal the headstone or something happened. And now it's actually got a proper marker. So that's what we're doing today, folks. So thanks for joining me here on my channel. If you're not a subscriber, bottom right hand corner of your screen, hit that overstay road sign, get on board my channel. Food, beer, visas, bad behavior, travel, beautiful women, debauchery, anything I want to do, really. All right, folks, so we just passed a sign that says we're entering the Brice's Crossroad battlefield site. Now, the actual site's up here at the crossroads, but, if you just kind of imagine in your mind back to, I can't remember what year it was, 1864 when this went down. We're about to find out. But you would have had Union and Confederate soldiers camped out all over this place, staging for a battle up here. And, with all the old saying, if history is forgotten, it's doomed to repeat itself. You got all these idiots tearing down statues and monuments and, trying to erase history. Well, what the fuck they think's going to happen? That everything's just going to be hunky-dory? No, it's going to repeat itself if you don't study history and learn from the mistakes and from, the good, the evil, the good, the bad, the ugly. No matter what it is, history is history. Study from it, study it, learn from it. Don't make the same mistakes again. But erasing history, what's going on in this country right now, it doesn't make any sense. It defies logic. Here we go. This is Brice's Crossroads. Now, this little church right here, cemetery to the right. I'm not sure when that church was built.
Right there, it'll tell you.
But it's called the Bethany ARP Church, organized in 1852. But we're going to come up here and park, folks, and I'm going to take you on a little walking tour of Brice's Crossroads National Battlefield. And also, there's a cemetery. There's a cemetery right there in front of the aircraft. So we're going to just park right here and get out and take a walk, folks. Thanks for joining us. All right, my friends, so here we go. And I'm not even sure what in order to start this tour. But this is General Sturgis's supreme effort to hold the crossroads, placing the 93rd Illinois, 8th Illinois, and 114th Illinois infantry here. And immediately behind, he places artillery consisting of let's see, Battery B of 2nd Illinois, 7th Wisconsin Battery, 14th Indiana Battery, Battery E of 1st Illinois, and Joyce's battery orders were given to fire over heads of infantry into advancing Confederates. Now, this thing here was erected by act of the legislature of the state of Mississippi, J.P. Coleman, governor, 1957. All right, so I'm gonna take a walk over here and we'll look at these, we'll take a look at these cannons, and then we'll go over to the cemetery. Folks, this is part of the National Park Service, U.S. Department of the Interior. If you're wondering who regulates the site, so to speak, or who's in charge of the site. Now, I don't know how long these cannons have been here, but they've been here as long as I've been on the earth, unless they have surreptitiously replaced them. But these appear to be the same cannons that have sat here for 50 years or so. Take a look in that barrel. Looks like we got a critter living up in there. Got Old Glory flying up there. Yeah, look at that. So somebody down in the comments can weigh in on the nomenclature of these particular cannons. Somebody out there will know the exact, all the info about it. So here you go. In memory of the men of the Confederate and the Federal armies who took part in the Battle of Brice's Crossroads of Tishomingo Creek, June 10, 1864, which resulted in a victory for the Confederate forces under Brigadier General Nathan Bedford Forrest. Okay, so this was a Confederate victory here. But it's a beautiful monument, folks. Beautiful little monument. And let's go over here and check out the what they say here. Western Campaign, 1864. All right, so let's see where we're at. Okay, obviously, all right, we're right here at the crossroads. And this was June 10, 1864. You got first contact over here, I guess, with the artillery, lighting them up on the flank. Okay, so then this was the Union retreat back over in this direction. They retreated across the creek. And the road, let's see, the road that we came in on, that's Guntown right there. So the road that we came in on was basically, and also in facing in this direction, is where the Confederacy were coming in, and you got the Union forces would have been back over in this direction. So there's some more information here on a big picture, strategic picture here. When General Sherman advanced on Atlanta, General Forrest sought to destroy the Union supply line between Nashville and Chattanooga. He had nearly reached the Tennessee River when he had to turn back to meet a Union force marching southeast from Memphis under General Sturgis. Forrest's remarkable ability to concentrate his men quickly and to strike vigorously resulted in total victory by 4,787 Confederates over 7,900 Federal troops who retreated in confusion up to Memphis. Yet Forrest was diverted from his primary mission of destroying the supply line, and so Sherman continued his march toward Atlanta. And obviously that's another significant story. But there you go, my friends. Okay, all this, folks, is history. Let's see if we got any park info. Maybe not. It might be a damn wasp nest. Ain't nothing in there. But just imagine standing here. Let's get the date right. What was it? June 10, 1864, when this little clash came together with Confederates over to this direction, opening up with the artillery pushed them back across this creek over here. And here we are. Yeah, June 10, 1864. And I'll have to check out that marker over there. I'm not sure what it says, but 1864, folks. Had a goddamn civil war going on. And you know, the issue with what's going on in this country right now is we're trying to erase history. That defies logic, but you know, these young skinny jean wearing Call of Duty shitheads and everybody else. And listen, I'm not taking sides. So let's get something straight. I'm not here taking anybody's sides. I'm saying that in any situation, if you start erasing history and forgetting history, you're fucked up, because it's going to repeat itself on down the line. So I hope everybody understands that position. All right, so I'm going to take you over here. And this is a Confederate grave site. This is Bethany Historic Cemetery, established in 1853. And it's a Confederate mass grave site from the Battle of Brice's Crossroads on June 10, 1864. Folks, so we'll just take a sampling of some of the dates and stuff. Mr. Fred Duncan, September 18, 1904. Okay, so born in 89, died in 78. Okay, this gentleman here, Vietnam vet, July 26, 1949, and looks like died at 83. So the graves in here, folks, are not just Confederate soldiers. I'm trying to walk where I'm not stepping on anybody's graves, but some of these, you know, some of these are just stones. There's no telling how old these stones are. There's no writing on them. And this looks like a infant here, 1933 to 1934. World War II vet, born in 1907. It's always eerie walking through a graveyard, because it just reminds you of our own mortality. And again, I'm trying to walk in a manner where I don't disrespect anybody's grave. But I guess this is just, they're so close together, it's the way I gotta walk. And these right here, no writing on these, so there's no telling how old those graves are. And we'll take a look over here, and we'll take a look over here in the back here. Over here in the back corner, we got the flagpoles back here, and this looks like where it's nothing but military folks buried. This is the Bethany Historic Cemetery, established 1853. There's Reverend Samuel A. Agnew, 1833 to 1902. Second pastor of Bethany Church, was a consistent diarist, so his daily entries formed the basis for the church and cemetery. The Bethany Historic Cemetery, referred to as the burial ground by Reverend Samuel A. Agnew, second pastor of the Bethany Associate Reformed Presbyterian Church, was laid out in 1853. Major John T. Humphreys donated 3.75 acres to the Bethany Church for this cemetery and a site for the Bethany Church, opened for worship on July 1st, 1853. Also, according to Reverend Agnew, the first burial in the cemetery was Mr. John Howard Nelson, who died March 27, 1853. He also states that 53 members of Bethany community were buried here before 1870. 17 members of the Bethany Church and others in the community were buried in the cemetery during the flux epidemic, which is a form of dysentery that swept through the community in the summer of 1857. On June 10, 1864, a major part of the Battle of Brice's Crossroads was fought through the cemetery, destroying much of it. as well as the church and the William Brice house which flanked it. In the latter part of July, the congregation and people of the community came together to repair the cemetery and church. This became a tradition for many years as an annual time for cleaning the cemetery. For many years after the war, the members of the church and community met the latter part of July to clean the cemetery. So there you go. So there's some history. Now let me come over here. And here we go on some history. This is a unknown Confederate soldier. And folks, I'm not going to go through each of them. I'll just give you a sampling here. This is Lieutenant William S. Pope, 7th Tennessee Cavalry, Confederate States of America, June 10, 1864. So all of these, Robert Owens, Bravo Company, 8th Mississippi Cavalry, B.F. Norman, Alpha Company, 12th Kentucky Cav, G.W. Whitworth, Delta Company, 12th Kentucky Cav, and I'm not sure what this says. Some of these, you really have to clean them up to see what they say. But you've got dates here, 1880 to 1923. So folks, this is a mass grave due to this battle of Confederate soldiers. Now in this area, I don't see any grave marked. Let's see if we can find a Union soldier. I think they're all Confederates. Now when I was on my way up here south of Tupelo, there's a cemetery where both Confederates and Union soldiers are buried, and I started to stop off there, but it was gonna come a sprinkling rain, I thought, and I was like, I'll go back down there later. Bad call. I should have pulled in there because they had both sides buried in there, and I was curious as to see how they had buried them, if they buried them together or put them in separate sections. Probably, you know, due to military, it's in separate sections, but I don't know that. So it's a piece of history here. Piece of history. And this is an infant child here. Edward Gaston, infant of CS and LR Brice, September 19, 1904, August 17, 1905. That's now there's an infant here, Catherine Grace, September 8, 1903 to April 3rd, 1904. So my goodness folks, they had 2 babies die. That's absolutely horrible. I can't imagine how them parents would feel. Anybody who's lost a child, I couldn't imagine it. Folks, okay, here's an older one here. Miss Emma Fitzpatrick Brice, daughter of W.M. and M.E., died May 31st, 1888 at 32. She died as she lived, believing in God. And you got the flagpole over here. And that flag's in a state of disrepair. It needs to be taken down. And let's see, Alabama. What do we got over here? Kentucky. Funded by Mechanized Cav. CSA Second National Flag, funded by the Society of the Order of the Southern Cross. Markers, funded by the Southern Historical Preservation Society. And there's Mississippi, funded by Mississippi Division. SCV, and here's Tennessee, funded by the Tennessee Division. We got a couple headstones out here, sort of away from everybody. And again, that's just a headstone. There's no writing on it. Lyndon, son of Jeff, and is that I don't know if that's Minningham, born February 23rd, 1868, and died March 23rd, 1896. Here's Lee Jr., infant son of Mr. and Mrs. Lee Watson, November 9th, 1929, gone too soon. So folks, several infants in this cemetery. That's it's just sad when you see that. But again, it's just walk through any cemetery. It's a grim reminder that this is our destination. I mean, you know, some cultures, religions, they don't bury the dead. I got it. You got different beliefs. But regardless, it's a reminder we're all mortal. So in 50 years, shit, I plan on being 110, folks. I got a new lease on life. I'm gonna live long enough to goddamn get every penny of my Social Security money back. I done changed my mind about dying early. I'm gonna live to be 110. But basically, within 50 years or so, we're all gonna be in the ground. Not all of us, you young bucks watching, you got a little bit longer to go. But for 50 years, my generation and older, we all gonna end up in the graveyard, my friends. Ain't no stopping. Okay, so Federal's second battle line. General Sturgis was able to use his infantry here for the first time in the battle. General Forrest had beaten. The Union cavalry, there's a little space there. Let's see. General Sturgis was able to use his infantry here for the first time. In the battle, General Forrest had beaten the Union cavalry before the infantry reached the battlefield. Infantry and cavalry formed this line. So infantry units embrace this line. Let's see, the 95th Ohio, 113th Illinois, 120th Missouri, 109th Illinois, 35th Illinois, 81st Illinois, 114th Illinois, 93rd Indiana, and 9th Minnesota. Okay, those are the infantry units. Then you got the cavalry units. Let's see. General Sturgis personal escort, the 19th Pennsylvania, blocking the Baldwyn Road, 3rd Iowa Battalion, and 4th Iowa. And again, this was erected by the legislature of the state of Mississippi. J.P. Coleman governed in 1957. All right, now we'll take a look over here and see what this marker has to say. Okay, open daily, sunrise to sunset. If you want to come out here and have a picnic. We used to do things like that as a kid. No metal detectors. Now, no vehicles beyond this point. You know, talking about metal detectors, you know, all these old battlefield sites, now obviously it's against the law, policy, rules, whatever. You can't come out here with metal detectors. But if you did, I mean, there's all kind of artifacts. All kind of artifacts around these battlefield sites. Any battlefield site, you're gonna have artifacts, whether it's just little bullets, you know, little metals, whatever you're gonna find. But there's no metal detecting out here. And here you go, Brice's Crossroads. That's Nathan Bedford Force. So if you look out across here, it's beautiful scenery, right? But on June 10th, 1864, there was nothing but violence, blood, chaos, death, loud noises, smoke, people screaming. Do we really want to erase this history and wait for it to repeat itself? I don't think so. All right, so Major General Nathan Bedford Forrest owned northern Mississippi and southwestern Tennessee in mid-1864, but that was not where the war was being won or lost. Port Hudson, Louisiana, and Vicksburg, Mississippi had fallen in June 1863, giving the Union control of the Mississippi River. General William T. Sherman was advancing steadily on Atlanta. Grant was engaging Lee at Cole Harbor and Petersburg, Virginia, in the push toward Richmond. Still, General Forrest's command worried Union planners. His cavalry could move fast and when dismounted, strike hard. Sherman maintained only a single railroad line to supply depots in central Tennessee. Preservation of that rail link was essential if the push toward Atlanta was to continue. That lifeline was particularly vulnerable to attack from the southwest, Forrest Theater of Operations. These larger considerations brought about the battle at Brice's Crossroads that took place on June 10, 1864. Forrest had actually begun to move on Sherman's lines on June 1, 1864, the same day that Brigadier General Samuel D. Sturgis left Memphis to engage Forrest's attention in Mississippi and Tennessee in order to keep him from mounting an attack on Sherman's supply line. Sturgis left Memphis with 8,100 troops. Forrest was ordered back to Mississippi to meet the Union invasion. After 8 days of marching, Sturgis met Forrest's 3,500 cavalry in the dense brush east of Tishomingo Creek. In the mire and muck of the rain-soaked Mississippi roads, Sturgis had allowed his command to string out for more than 6 miles. After a brief initial skirmish, Forrest engaged the advancing Union cavalry units about noon with a superior force of dismounted cavalry, pushing the Northerners back to a second line of battle, hastily mounted by arriving infantry. The Union cavalry retired as infantry units were thrown into line as they reached the front. Weary from the double-time march along impassable roads and exhausted by the heat of the day, Forrest launched another attack about 2 p.m. against the 2nd Union line, again outnumbered by Forrest's troops. The Yankees broke under several charges. It was only a concerted stand at the crossroads by Union artillery and a staunch defense by rear guard infantry at the Tishomingo Creek Bridge that allowed most of the Union troops to retreat west of the bridge. Forrest's now mounted cavalry pressured the retreating Union force for more than 25 miles, resulting in heavy Union losses. Federal losses amounted to 223 killed, 394 wounded, and 1,623 missing. 18 artillery pieces out of 20 and the entire train of 200 supply wagons were lost. Confederate losses amounted to 96 killed and 396 wounded. In explaining his victory, General Forrest is quoted as saying, "Well, I got there first with the most men." However, in late July, Atlanta had fallen. Grant laid siege to Petersburg and Richmond in October, and Forrest's command was again bottled up to northern Mississippi by Major General Andrew J. Smith. When Forrest finally arrived east into Alabama in November to join Major General John Bell Hood's ill-fated invasion of central Tennessee, he had little effect on the major theaters of the larger war during 1864. And folks, this is trail stop A1 here at the Brice's Crossroads Civil War battlefield site. All right, we'll go to the next spot. All right, folks, the Brice home stood where this monument is located. The battle-scarred 2-story house with its blood-stained floors and walls was used by wounded of both armies to escape shot and shell as the battle raged. All right, so right there, that's where the Brice home stood, and therefore that's one of the places called Brice's Crossroads. Can you imagine? You know, can you imagine this is your home where you work and you farm and you raise your kids, and next thing you know there's a major battle? I think we as Americans really need to think about that, because when we go off on these little foreign, I hate that word, we need to think about that when we go to places on the other side of the globe and bomb and kill farmers that don't even know what the hell's going on. Sometimes we lose sight of that. We think we're at war, but really we're just in people's backyard that are trying to make a living. It ain't got nothing to do with the United States. Yeah, I'm talking about Iraq and Afghanistan, everywhere else. So we were just standing right over in this direction. So we'll come over here and check out this monument. This is a Sons of Confederate Veterans, 1896. Brought out of Gallup for some 8 miles. Morton's and Rice's batteries were sent forward to a hill and opened with spirit and execution. General Forrest ordered his artillery to be double shotted with canister and moved to within 60 yards of Federal lines, about a 1/4 mile northeast of Brice's house, opening with great destruction. As the Federals were drawing back toward Tishomingo Creek, Morton's and Rice's batteries fired with fearful carnage. They charged their batteries up to the enemy and poured a deadly tide of canister and ghastly effect as the Federals emerged from the creek. Forrest's artillery played upon them for 1/2 mile, killing or disabling large numbers. And this was erected by Freeman's Battery, Forrest Artillery Camp, 1939, Sons of Confederate Veterans, June 11th, 2005. So again, that's where the Brice's house stood, where that monument is. All right, folks, this is the other stop. You drive down, just down the way from where we were just at. So we were just right over there. You come down this road. It's actually pretty nice little parking area. And you got walking trails. And I'm not sure how far it goes. But if you look over here at this open field, you know, all this would have been part of the battle. And unless my directions are wrong, you know, the Confederate side is attacking, coming this way, pushing the Union forces back behind me here. Here you go, pursuit of the Union. And again, I'm going to read this. This is more for me and for the historical record. So here we go. Major General Nathan Bedford Forrest Cavalry had routed Brigadier General Benjamin Grierson's Federal Cav one half mile east of the crossroads, and the Federal infantry that was thrown into battle line 1/4 mile east of the crossroads. Now again, the crossroads are behind us. A strong defense at the crossroads by several Union infantry regiments and artillery units allowed the infantry brigades of Colonels Alexander Wilkin and George B. Hogue to retreat west from the crossroads up the Ripley Road. At the crossroads, in connection with the artillery, we maintained our position for more than 2 hours, a regular stand-up fight, the enemy making charge after charge in front, only to be driven back by volleys of grape, canister, and musketry. My command fighting until almost surrounded the enemy within 20 steps of our guns. We were the last to leave the field that day. That's from Lieutenant Colonel Andrew W. Rogers of the 81st Illinois Volunteer Infantry. The Union's defenses at the crossroads was broken by repeated Confederate charges and by Colonel Bartow's flanking movement and threat to gain the Union rear. The steady advance of my men and the concentrated, well-directed, and rapid fire from my batteries threw the Union back, and the retreat or rout began. The 72nd Ohio Infantry and 6th Indiana Artillery and several companies of the 55th United States Colored Infantry defended the Tishomingo Creek Bridge along with remnants of the retreating Union regiments. Now this is a quote, or this is information from Major General Nathan Bedford Forrest. Before reaching Tishomingo Creek, the road was so blockaded with abandoned vehicles of every description that it was difficult to move the artillery forward. Ordering up my horses, they were mounted, and the pursuit was then continued, and the enemy were driven until dark. He attempted the destruction of his wagons loaded with ammunition and bacon, but so closely was he pursued that many of them were saved without injury, although the road was lighted for some distance. In the bottom of the south prong of the Hatchie River, They had abandoned the balance of their wagon train, all their wounded, and 14 pieces of artillery. On reaching the town of Ripley, about 8 a.m., the enemy was found in line of battle, and at the first appearance of additional force, he again retreated. And from this place to the end of our pursuit, the enemy offered no organized resistance, but retreated in the most complete disorder, throwing away guns, clothing, and everything calculated to impede his flight. This victory may be justly considered one of the most complete of the war, and for it I feel indebted to the valor of my troops. And that's from Major General Forrest. All right, so here we are looking at the map. Okay, so that's where the Brice's house was, right there, and we basically came down this road. Okay, and we're somewhere in that area right there. And again, let's see, in the red, that's the Confederate forces, and this is the Union retreat. So they're basically hauling ass up that road that we just came in on. And in the words of, according to General Forrest, he said that he got here first and he had more men. That's the way to do it, right? Folks, just looking out across this field, I mean, it's so peaceful here. Other than there's a guy parked in the lot with the engine running. Other than that background noise, all you hear is birds chirping. A little bit of a breeze going today. But it's amazing how, let's see, so 1864, what is that, 150? Shit, I can't do math in my head and I'm walking, talk to a camera. 150 plus years ago, this is Americans fighting Americans, killing each other by the droves. I don't think we need to forget about this. And this is the Union retreat defense at the bridge. All right, so again, here's force, main force, basically chasing the Union forces, and back, that's where we were standing initially. And so they're pushing them in that direction. The bottleneck created by the Tishomingo Creek Bridge and the flanking movement of the Confederate Colonel Bartow's 2nd Tennessee Regiment almost spelled disaster for Union troops retreating from the crossroads in front of Forrest's main force. The steep banks of Tishomingo Creek, the waters of the creek, high from days of rain, and the confusion of a disorganized retreat that included a supply train of 200 wagons almost resulted in the loss of the entire Union expeditionary force at this place. Now, this is a quote from Colonel Edward F. Winslow with the 2nd Cavalry Brigade. The shell bursting near where General Grierson and myself were standing gave me the first intimation of defeat, and I immediately galloped to the front to look after the 7th Illinois, 10th Missouri, and 4th Iowa regiments, finding all the way to the bridge in an indiscriminate mass of wagons, artillery, caissons, ambulances, and broken, disordered troops. The 4th Iowa was forced to dismount at the bridge and take position on a small hill at the front to check the enemy while their horses passed the creek. 2 infantry regiments, which were retreating in disorder, were by this maneuver saved from destruction or capture. So, you know, it sounds like this creek had a lot to do with it, this Tishomingo Creek, because obviously the battle's up here, but when you go into retreat mode and you got a damn creek with steep banks, and you know, the creeks, it's been raining, days of rain, it's not easy to get, you know, hundreds, 1,000 men across that damn thing, especially with 200 loaded down wagons. So I think that creek was a big factor making that bottleneck. And then, you know, probably at some point somebody had to say, hey, leave them fucking wagons, let's get the fuck out of here, live to fight another day. So here we are, folks. I'm not an expert. You know what, like I said, I've lived around this crossroads since I came into this world. I'm not an expert on the history, so if anything I say or comment on here is way off base, somebody correct me down in the comments. And that's the joy of the way this platform works. You know, if I just put this in a documentary and you went watched it on your TV and there's something wrong, there's nobody to correct it, right? But the good thing about the comment section, if I say something that's inaccurate, you have a chance to correct me, correct the record, and weigh in. All I've done is merely establish the platform and the time and the place for people to discuss things. About the terrain and the landscape. So it's talking about even as late as 1864, northeast Mississippi was sparsely populated. Just 30 years earlier, the whole area had belonged to the Chickasaw Nation, and many of the local white landowners had moved here after 1845. The Bethany Associate Reformed Presbyterian Church, today the lone occupant of the crossroads, was founded in 1852. So that church back there, well, that's an old church. During the 1860s, some of the land was used to grow cotton and corn, but much of the area remained wooded with dense underbrush. The battlefield of Brice's Crossroads, therefore, was as much forest as field, which greatly affected how soldiers could fight. Cavalry troops had to leave their horses in the rear and venture into the forest on foot. Soldiers might be just a few yards away from the enemy line and not be able to see them through the underbrush. Now, folks, right there, I don't know if you can see it, that's the Brice house. In 1921, William Brice moved to Mississippi from his native South Carolina in 1859, building a house for his family at the intersection of two roads near Tishomingo Creek. A National Park Service monument now stands at the site. That was photographed by S.A. Murph, Mississippi Department of Archives and History. The day was extremely hot and sultry. The country was largely woodland, the roads were muddy, and the rapid march under a scorching sun had a very exhausting effect upon the men. That's Sergeant McDonald, 9th Minnesota Infantry. Tippett County life. When I first came here, I was bewildered. Every way I looked, I saw woods, no clearing. I saw for the first time bored wells. Saw many things which appeared very strange at first, but all have become commonplace to me now. That's from the diary of Samuel A. Agnew, December 15th, 1852. You got this little sort of overlook right here. And we're up on this hill. Okay, so imagine a battle kicks off behind us. And then at some point, you've got all these Union forces, 200 wagons, whatever they got, their horses, trying to get over this creek. That's Tishomingo Creek. So I'm going to take you down there to the creek and show you that area, because again, that's a bottleneck right there. Basically, when you're retreating and you hit some obstacle like that, folks, it bottlenecks you, and it's a shooting gallery. That beautiful field over there. Look at these trees. Mississippi is beautiful, folks. Beautiful state. Union wagon train. A critical factor in the Union defeat at Brice's Crossroads was the decision by an unknown officer to bring most, if not all, of the Union supply train across the Tishomingo Creek Bridge and into the field across the road from where you stand now. Okay, so that field over there is where they staged all of the wagons. So they got them across that creek, staged all the wagons here in anticipation of the battle. Okay, which is great if you're winning. It's great if you have all your logistics across there and you're winning and you're on the run. Now you don't have to bring them across. But it's a fucking shooting gallery if you're losing and you go on the retreat and try to retreat across that creek with all your logistics. Because if you're running for your life, you're going to be forced to abandon that stuff. The supply train consisted of 250 wagons, each pulled by a team of 4 to 6 horses or mules. They carried ammunition, food, forage, and equipment, and also served as ambulances. All right, and if you can see that, folks, Union wagon train entering Petersburg, Virginia, April 1865. And that's a 1865 too. So you see those wagons? Those are big ass wagons loaded down with ammo and food and everything else. Okay, pack animals, wagons, ambulances, the sick servants, all of these necessary evils which clog an army came dragging and straggling along in front of the guard. They ought not to have gone over the bridge, but they moved right on. Captain William Scott, 4th Iowa Cavalry. So there you go. So imagine those wagons sitting over in that field, and then from this direction, here come the Confederates pushing them back, and it's time to retreat. Now you got to get all those jokers back across that creek. Ain't no wonder. And according to Major General Forrest, he had them outnumbered. So I had a bad call bringing them wagons across that creek. He probably should have brought like 10% of them, 20% of them across the creek. And if they started winning, you know, called them in phases. But if he brought the majority across, started getting his ass beat, bottleneck shooting gallery. This is a nice little turn off right here. You know, so much space up there to walk around and see if you want to hike for the day, have a picnic, whatever, learn about some history. And then we're going to take a right, okay, and we're going to travel in the direction of the Union retreat. So the direction we're going now is the way they were retreating from the battle up here, trying to cross Tishomingo Creek. And there's some markers right here, so let me pull off and read the markers, and then we're going to go over there to the creek area. Just standing up on this little ridge line here, and let's see what it says. Tishomingo Creek Bridge, retreating wagons blocked bridge. General Forrest captured 200 wagons, 14 pieces of artillery, and hundreds of men. Artillery fire from the crossroads killed hundreds of Federals here. The crossroads are up there where that truck is coming from. And you know, we were just standing up there. So you got all the wagons coming down. They get into a bottleneck right here at this creek, and they're basically here trying to get across the creek, and you've got fucking artillery being lobbed over here down into the masses. And again, it was probably just a damn shooting gallery, to the point they had to abandon, what did he say, 200 wagons and 14 pieces of artillery and hundreds of men. That artillery fire raining down on their asses, folks. It was hell that day for those guys. I'm sure it was. They had no choice but to scurry across that creek and head for the hills. Here's the creek. This is a Tishomingo Creek Bridge. And again, if you're looking for some history, this is a pretty cool little tour. And this is indicative of a creek that I'm used to growing up with here in Mississippi. That water's just clear as can be. Some places that it backs up will have little fish in it. We used to go swimming. And this is the creek here. You see, you know, it's pretty steep banks, especially trying to get men across this thing, much less wagons and horses. Give you a look over there. It's beautiful. So let me get down here and give you a better look. And folks, you know, since this place is run, you know, by the National Park Service, it is, I don't know what the proper word is, because I've been out of, if you're in a wheelchair or you can't walk, you got bad fucking knees, you can walk down through here. What is it, the Americans with Disabilities? I don't know. Folks, it's friendly if you're not real mobile. How about that? Spoils of war. As Confederate cannon rained down on exhausted Union troops waiting to cross the Tishomingo Creek, a somewhat orderly retreat turned into a panic rout. Soldiers swam across the creek, bypassing the clogged and bottleneck bridge, and ran into the woods. Officers lost control of their units. Okay, so you're trying to get people across the bridge. They got artillery raining down on them. It was just panic. You know, assholes and elbows, people crossing the creek, running up in the woods. I mean, folks are running for their lives. Just 1 month after the Battle of Brice's Crossroads, Union and Confederate troops faced off again at the Battle of Tupelo. Union General A.J. Smith and his troops defeated the Confederates on July 14th, but seeing that his supplies were running low, Smith opted to return to Memphis. While it was a retreat in the technical sense of the word, it in no way resembled the panic flight of General Sturgis' force just a few weeks earlier. Okay. All right, let's just go over this. General Forrest, on examining the tables turned in by his provost marshal, chief quartermaster, and chief of ordnance, learned that his command had captured the following at Brice's Crossroads. Personnel: Colonel G.W. McCaig of the 10th Illinois, 1 assistant surgeon, 18 captains, 40 lieutenants, 87 non-com officers, 3 musicians, 1,468 privates, or a total of 1618 men. Quartermaster property: 161 mules, 23 horses, 168 horse wagons, 7 4-horse wagons, 1 2-horse wagon, 16 ambulances, and hundreds of sets of harnesses. Okay, ordnance stores. You got 16 cannon, 1 3-inch ordnance rifle, 5 James rifles, 5 6-pounder guns, 2 12-pounder howitzers, 3 12-pounder Napoleons, 28 limbers, 15 caissons, hundreds of rounds of artillery, ammunition, which is shot canister and spherical case, 15,000 stands of small arms, 300,000 rounds of small arms ammunition, several hundred accoutrements, cap pouches and cartridge boxes, and a number of sets of artillery harnesses. So folks, there's a couple pictures there. But they basically, in this battle right here, I mean, they cleaned up. Not only did they win the battle, they had a shit ton of prisoners and a shit ton of supplies and ordnance. Now let me just give you a graphic here. All right. Now, artillery is coming down on your ass from over there. They're trying to get the wagons across this bridge, which is a big ass, backup. So people are just coming down the banks of this right here and then trying to get up here and get away under fire. All right, I'm gonna try not to fall my ass in this creek because I want to go get some lunch after this little walking tour. But there you go. There's a close-up look at the creek.
Beautiful.
That bridge right there. So again, it's so peaceful right now. And that water's probably so cool, I just want to take my boots off and just go walking up the creek. But there you go, folks. So there's a look around. Oh, what these guys experienced during this battle. Looking down, that's the road coming through there, so assumably the bridge was there, but you don't know that. The road probably shifted over the years. I don't know if this is the original bridge that we're standing on, but I mean, that's the road, so you make the assumption the bridge was somewhere in there. Beautiful up through there. But you can see the amount of vegetation. This is Mississippi, folks. It's hot, it's humid. And that was on June 10th. Today is like July. It's about a month later, but it's the same conditions in Mississippi. Hot, humid, and it's been raining. All right, so let's talk about Chief Tishomingo. They say that's the only known portrait of Chief Tishomingo of the Chickasaw Indians. That's a research division of the Oklahoma Historical Society. Long before Civil War soldiers fought at this site in 1864, this land was part of the Chickasaw Nation. Tishomingo, whose name derived from the Chickasaw title Tishomingo, meaning speaker of the chief or assistant chief in the Chickasaw language, lived near here and was a prominent leader of the Chickasaws in this district. Tishomingo was born as early as the 1730s, probably at Chickasaw Old Town in what is now northwest Tupelo. Tishomingo was a warrior and a staunch defender of Chickasaw lands and sovereignty. Chickasaws fought alongside American troops in numerous conflicts after the American Revolution, notably in the Northwest Indian Confederacy War in the 1790s and in the War of 1812. Tishomingo fought with distinction against the Creeks and the Red Stick War portion of the latter conflict in 1813 to 1814. Despite this service, the Chickasaws were forced to sell their lands in Mississippi to the U.S. government because of the influx of white settlers. In the 1830s, all of the southeastern tribes were relocated to Indian Territory in present-day Oklahoma. Despite the removal of the Chickasaw Indians from this area, their legacy lives on. Chief Tishomingo's name is still attached to this creek, a town in a Mississippi county which originally extended from the Tennessee River to within a few miles of here. The tribal capital in the west was also named for him and persists today as Tishomingo, Oklahoma. Chief Tishomingo died in present-day Arkansas about 1840 while assisting tribal members on the Trail of Tears. The location of his grave is unknown. Although but little known beyond the limits of his nation, yet he was a man that had seen wars and fought battles. Stood high among his own people as a brave and a good man. Tishomingo's obituary, 1841. Okay, we're right there next to the creek, and they're saying that's his original home site. The lands of the Chickasaw Nation encompassed much of northern Mississippi. Map of the states of Mississippi, Louisiana, and Arkansas Territory, 1832. All right, folks. Now we're going to take you to one more site. There's obviously a lot more in here, but we're going to take you to one more site, and then we're going to call it a day. But again, if you're up here in North Mississippi, beautiful little place to visit and walk around, and just, it's so quiet. You can see I'm the only guy here. There's not many visitors during the week. It's free. You don't have to pay anything. Just walk around, sit here and put yourself back into 1864 and imagine what it was like to have artillery and raining down on your ass and have soldiers in hot pursuit, and you're just trying to get across that creek to survive. All right, folks, so now we're going to leave this area. Now we're going to drive across Tishomingo Creek Bridge, and this will be the direction of the retreat. But where I'm going to take you is just over here off to a back road to a Confederate soldier's burial site. Now we're going to be taking a right here. Which you can follow these signs, right? These little signs have arrows and more information about which way to go and where there's more markers. It's just fun to drive around and read the markers and look at the site. Folks, we're going to turn down this little back road right here. Look at the beautiful trees. My goodness, how can you not love this place? Go right there, little creek. And we're gonna pop out over here to, like I said, a burial ground for a Confederate soldier. All right, and again, it's just another little pull off here. You know, back in the day, this place was nothing. When this place was just a dirt road, there was nothing but a headstone here. And now it's a proper place to pull off and learn something. Now this road has changed over the years. You know, this used to be a dirt road right here, and all it was a headstone sort of leaned up against a tree. Now this is not the original headstone. It's the tomb of James C. Jordan, but it was just an old original headstone, and at some point they replaced this with a proper headstone. And I don't know the whole story, but I think it's because they probably thought some treasure hunters or just assholes would steal it. And I think it's in a museum. I don't know that for a fact. Somebody correct me down in the comments. But this is James C. Jordan, Charlie Company, Orleans, Alabama Cavalry Battalion. Confederate States of America, June 10, 1864. So this gentleman here was, let's just make assumptions, he was wounded during this battle. Whether he died right here or he got wounded up there at the crossroads and made it. We're only a few miles away. And this is where he was laid to rest. You know, but again, before they paved this road and, you know, made it into a proper, you know, just a proper parking area, you know, it's just a dirt road. You come down this dirt road, there wasn't no sign or nothing. There was just a headstone laying up against a tree. I don't know, maybe in the 80s they moved it, 90s. But certainly back in the 70s, that was just a headstone laying on that tree right there. Or a tree. That seems like the right tree, but I can't say that for a fact. I just know I can see it plain as day. Coming down this dirt road, you looked over and you could see a headstone. This 4-acre site marks the grave of Confederate Sergeant James C. Jordan, who was killed during the pursuit of Union troops on June 10, 1864. Jordan and his 17th Alabama Battalion had routed General Samuel Sturgis' Union forces at Brice's Crossroads. About 1 mile east of the site, and he was mortally wounded near the Phillips House. Jordan was a cavalryman under the command of Major J.N. George, Colonel William A. Johnson's Alabama Brigade. He was later laid to rest at the site where he fell, here between the cedar trees that shade his grave. The land is also the site associated with both the Union advance and flight and intimately identified with Sturgis' route, underscoring why the Battle of Brice's Crossroads is significant. The Austin, Texas and Waco, Texas Civil War roundtables raised money for this acquisition during the annual Texas Civil War Preservation Seminar held at Hill College in Hillsboro, Texas in November of 2001. Special thanks to Dan Laney of Austin, Texas for making this possible. Civil War Preservation Trust. So there you go. Got those beautiful trees right there. And I'm not, you know, it's just curious how people even know about this. I mean, this is a little country road here, the backwoods of Mississippi. And it was just a single grave right here. You only knew about it through word of mouth. And I guess it's a good thing somebody finally documented it. And now you've got a nice parking area just to come here and look out into the Mississippi wilderness and learn a little bit more about this history. Okay, so here's more information, right? So we started out there at Bethany at Brice's Crossroads. We went down to the creek. Okay, we came down, and I'm not looking at this map. I'm not exactly sure where we're at. We're somewhere here. But here you go. The Confederate artillery stayed in motion, chasing the retreating Union troops through the swampy, wooded terrain. Captain John J. Morton and his artillery reached Haddon Bridge as the Federals paused to form a defensive line on the west side of Phillips Branch, sending a hail of bullets back toward their pursuers. General Forrest appeared on the ridge, and Morton called to him, "General, you'd better get lower on the hill. They'll hit you here." The artilleryman expected a rebuke for speaking so impertinently to his commanding officer, but Forrest calmly agreed and sat down by a tree to wait for his cavalry brigades. Forrest then did something unheard of. He instructed Morton to make a charge with the artillery without support. Forrest took charge of an approaching cavalry column and led them around to flank the Union position, leaving Morton's artillery to make a frontal attack alone. The young captain followed his orders and approached to within about 60 yards of the Federal line. Once his guns began firing, Forrest dismounted cavalry attacked on the flank. The tactic worked. The Union troops abandoned their position and continued the retreat. This battle is known to history as Brice's Crossroads because it took place on and around the property of local resident William Brice. But other residents of this area were also directly affected, as troops from both armies moved through the area. Just as Brice's Crossroad is named for the Brice family, other landmarks and geographic features along the Federals' retreat path, such as Haddon Bridge and Phillips Branch, are named for the people who lived there. Presbyterian minister Samuel A. Agnew lived just 3 miles from the crossroads and was well acquainted with his neighbors. In the diary that he kept for 50 years, he made many mention of the local residents whose name became associated with the path of the battle. There you go. And this is talking about, that's a picture from his diary about James Jordan. A young Confederate soldier from Alabama named Jimmy Jordan was wounded at the Battle of Brice's Crossroads and died nearby at the home of the Phillips family. Sergeant Jordan was buried on their property, and at some point 2 cedar trees were planted to mark his grave. Over 300 men were killed in the battle on June 10, 1864. The bodies of the dead soldiers were hastily buried. The bodies of the Union soldiers were exhumed in 1867 and reinterred in the National Cemetery at Corinth, Mississippi. The graves of many soldiers, especially those strewn along the Federal retreat route, had no markers and are now unknown to history. Confederate burials were given more care. Some, like Jordan, were buried on private property. Some of those bodies, such as that of John Rice, who was buried on the Agnew property, were later removed and taken home by friends and relatives. Still other soldiers were laid to rest in a section of the cemetery at nearby Bethany Church. While some soldiers have memorial gravestones at the Bethany Cemetery, the actual locations of their remains are unknown. This entry from the 1860 U.S. Census of Monroe County, Alabama, lists members of the William Jordan family, including 16-year-old son James. James was likely the same young man who soon after enlisted in an Alabama cab unit and died here in 1864. His family and siblings migrated from South Alabama to Central Texas near Waco sometime before the 1870 census. J.C. Jordan, 1st Sergeant Moreland's Battalion, was buried at the Phillips house with 2 cedar trees to mark his resting place. Samuel A. Agnew, Confederate Veteran Magazine, 1900. There you go, folks. Beautiful cedar trees right there, marking the death of that young soldier. And again, all the Union soldiers, according to that, were interred up north of here in a town called Corinth. So they're laid to rest up there. Hope everybody enjoyed this little walking tour of the Brice's Crossroads battlefield site. It is by no means complete, nor do I certify everything as being historically accurate. I'm just injecting my thoughts on what I'm reading, what I'm looking at, and maybe what went on. So if you have any questions, comments, leave them down in the description, or excuse me, leave them down in the comment section, folks. If you're not a subscriber on my channel, bottom right hand corner of your screen, hit that Overstay Road sign. Get on board my channel. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out. Road, backwoods, folks. It's just beautiful. Indicative of a little bridge out in the middle of the country. It's got a 3-ton gross weight ratio on it. Ain't no sides on it, so you don't want to come across this thing drunk. As you can see, that's a pretty good little drop. So you don't come through here late at night drunk and you run off the side of that damn bridge. That'd be the end of you. Maybe not the end of you, but probably a couple stitches and then fuck your car up. Guaranteed. Folks, you talk about a pretty piece of property. My goodness, look at them trees. There's land far as I can see. Check out that old barn. Now this is the Cretaceous Fossil Park. Somebody done run into that. Some drunk reds now. Just a little added bonus. This place is north of Baldwyn, Mississippi. Now, I'm gonna read the sign back there. It's called the Crustacean Park or what have you. But basically down here, and it's been many years since I've been here, but you can come dig in the side of this creek and you can find shark's teeth. So whether you want to believe it or not, I'll read the sign to give you the facts, but basically however many hundreds of thousands or millions of years ago. Where I'm standing was underwater. It's an ocean. But this place right here, I don't know, probably a decade ago I came down here, and there's folks down there I think digging. But basically all in this creek, you don't got to dig too much. You find shark's teeth, fossils, all kind of stuff. But you know, as a kid, Saturdays, Sundays, we'd go to the creek and barbecue and eat out, swim, hike. Now, back then I didn't know I could dig for shark's teeth, I don't think, but this place is just north of Baldwyn, Mississippi, off of Highway 45. And we're just south of Boonville, Mississippi. It's just a little turn off. If you're going northbound, it's just a little turn off to the right. Let me get up here and read the sign. Sign's broken. Some drunk rednecks done backed into the damn thing. But let me get the facts for you. This here's a whole family down there just enjoying the day, picnicking, digging for fossils. Here's a look around the place. All right, folks, so I messed this part up. I was on time lapse instead of recording. But basically it's, what is that, W.M. Browning, Cretaceous Fossil Park. Back in 1990, somehow they made a discovery and they found shark's teeth and dinosaur teeth embedded in the creek. So you can go there and you can do a little digging and find these things. But it's indicative that this site was underwater over 76 million years ago, prior to the dinosaurs becoming extinct, due to the asteroid that impacted in the Gulf of Mexico. So hey, thanks for joining me on this video. Don't forget to subscribe. I will see you on the next one, my friends. Peace out.